You're listening to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. We all have leadership within us, and once we understand how to challenge perceived limitations, we're able to influence those we're leading. Josh is a leadership coach, trainer, and speaker. He's also a veteran of the United States Air Force with over 20 years of leadership experience. Are you ready to transform your leadership skills by tapping into unrecognized potential to achieve limitless results? Let's get ready for liftoff. It's time to go from great to greater. Here's Josh and today's episode.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. I'm excited to be with you once again for another fantastic episode. This episode is going to be a personal favorite of mine, and the reason being is I'm joined by not only a guest, but a good friend of mine, a close friend of mine who is a father, a husband, and I'll say it for him. He's not going to say this, but he is a workflow guru. This man is a master of workflow efficiency and workflow management. And I'm joined by none other than the one, the only Pete Coleman. Pete, thanks for joining us on the podcast.
And I am honored to be here. Thank you. Friend you are indeed. And we've known each other for almost 10 years now. Yeah. Thanks for having me on board, man. So like you said, I am a 4-year-old father of 4. Been married to my beautiful bride, Kaylee, 15 years. Blessed to have her as my wife. As my dad always says, I outkicked my coverage. She's too good for me, and I know it. So, very blessed man. Got happy, healthy kiddos and a wife that loves me. I've been in the automotive world in one way, shape, or form for the last 20 years. Started way back in the day, parking cars at a dealership. Always had the car bug. And I spent the last, it'll be 10 years in August with Christian Brothers. So it's a brand I love. I believe in it. And just love being around the brand.
Very good. And Pete, you and I met, of course, through Christian Brothers Automotive. And we met, as you mentioned, about a decade ago. Walk us through, I'd love for the audience to hear about your journey with Christian Brothers. When you and I first met, you had been working with the brand, I believe, for a couple of years at that point as a service advisor. And I've seen tremendous growth in you, not just
Yeah, absolutely. So some of that growth, and we'll get into it, was sought after, some of it wasn't. But I started, so before Christian Brothers, I worked at a dealership. I worked for a Volvo dealership in Colorado. I came to Christian Brothers and I took a 56% pay cut. I remember at the time.
56? I'm going to die.
A second kid on the way. Okay, and at that time, I had a little God nudge, but something told me to take the plunge. So I did. I went to work for Christian Brothers Highlands Range. Started as an advisor. Back then, those stores were putting out like typical annual revenue was anywhere they were $1.7 to $2 million. 9-bay stores, all of them at that time, or most of them. And I had the privilege, of going to work at a store that had incredible capability for growth. So I got to start there as an advisor, help be a part of building that from the ground up. So all of this stuff now that people have branded the Pete Coleman method and things like that, I think of it as a gift. And I had the opportunity to kind of solve a lot of new challenges that Christian Brothers stores, or most of them, hadn't experienced yet, because we were kind of breaking the model. So a lot of these processes came by trial and error, which a lot of people don't see. And there was tons of time where, stuff didn't work, and it was, not smooth, and the process was complicated and clunky and lots of headaches. So I eventually became the general manager of Christian Brothers Highlands Ranch, and ran that store for about 7 years. And then my wife and I recently, the last 2 years, relocated to Iowa. She's from Iowa, so we decided to pull out of the Denver housing market while it was hot and then raise our 4 kids in the Midwest. And it's been nothing but a blessing here as well. So
very good. And you alluded to the Pete Coleman method, which we're not going to glaze over because that is the namesake for this episode. It's the Pete Coleman method. And I'd ask Pete that you share, you mentioned that when you first started with Christian Brothers, the average annual revenue was right around $1.8 to $2 million. By the time you left Highlands Ranch, it was significantly higher than that, largely in part because of the method after your name. And so if you would share where the numbers had grown to by the time you left Highlands Ranch, and also what the Pete Coleman method is for those listening to the episode.
Yeah. So by the time I left, we were a $5 million store, which is new territory for Christian Brothers. So year over year, we experienced substantial growth. Okay. And, I'm also not naive to see the things that are evident and plain, such as Highlands Ranch had phenomenal demographics. We had a lot of stuff going for us. Okay. But there's plenty of businesses and stores alike that have all the same demographics or better, and don't make the use of it. So the Pete Coleman method, as it's called now, comes about, again, a lot of trial and error, but the 30,000 foot view it's the best way that I've found in this model, specifically for Christian Brothers, okay, to run an efficient store and kind of get the most out of it. So it's a way that I found that I approach the day-to-day, the workflow, how tickets are written up, how technicians are treated, how work's dispatched. So the Pete Coleman method is, from a high level, it is a organized approach. So instead of taking in chaos and clutter and all that stuff, none of that is beneficial at the end of the day if you can't get through it. And you can't get through it in a way that, not only honors your technicians and your advisors, but at the end of the day, the customer is all that matters. So we want to make that process the best we can. So the Pete Coleman method, it's just an organized, easy, and effective way to handle workflow. But it goes further, man. Like the Pete Coleman method, then we'll get into it and stuff later. Like, I've had a lot of just situations where it's just a lifestyle and kind of how I choose to approach stuff. So,
yeah, that's I've seen it, Pete. I've been able to witness it live in person, and specifically, what I'm hearing you say is a lot of this comes down to intentionality. And you mentioned it's how technicians are treated. It is it's heavy on process, but it's also heavy on people. And intentionality comes along with the territory. And you also alluded to the fact that there's a lot of trial and error that a lot of people don't see. And even in our own lives, we experience a lot of trials and tribulations that people don't see, but we ultimately grow because of it. And some people might look at what you guys are doing at the Ankeny, Iowa location and think, hey, these guys were an overnight success. And the reality is, no, it came with a lot of trials, tribulations, a lot of trial and error, a lot of mistakes, a lot of failures. But as we've shared on this episode, on this podcast before, if we're not failing at something, we're not truly learning. And if we're not learning, we're not growing. And if we're going to grow through anything, we've got to be willing to go through anything. And you allowed yourself and your team the option to make mistakes. You allowed yourself and your team the option to fail at something for the sake of growth and development. So
absolutely. And it's, man, I always tell the guys, like, hey, win or lose, right? We had a record week, we're going to break it down, right? We had the worst week we've had, we're going to break it down. So you got to have talent. You got to have, there's more to the recipe. You can't just put a process in place and go, hey, we're going to, shoot the lights out. So there's, again, nowadays you got to have the guys that are good at their job. You got to have good technicians. You got to have good people around. Okay. But I will always take attitude and effort. Okay. Work ethic, things like that. Those two things are the things that I hire for, the things that I fire for. And unless any person on my team, if they don't have those two attributes, the process and stuff is irrelevant, because if they don't have a good attitude, they don't have a good work ethic, they're not going to follow through on the process that I do that. So, having talented people that can go through and execute this process and believe in it makes a huge difference too. So,
and to your point, if we're talking about a recipe, you also have to have the right people as you're sharing to tend to that recipe, to tend to whatever you're cooking, so to speak. And we talked about it before. The two things that we can control in our lives each and every day is our attitude and our effort. We can always choose positivity, even on those hard days, those challenging days. I'm not saying it's easy, and oftentimes it's not, but it's a choice. And even on those very tough days, we can still choose positivity. Not every day is going to be a good day, but we can find the good in every day.
I said most days aren't. There's I think it was I forget who wrote the Thomas Sowell maybe, but it was, life isn't what happens to you, but it's how you react, and
100%.
that's how we treat this. So you work on my team, you work with me. It's a culture of ownership. It's a culture of accountability. Okay. So meaning we're going to follow this process. Okay. Everyone's got clear expectations. You're not going to be upset when I say, hey, we didn't follow the process because it's clear. Okay. Yeah. So we've got a remarkable team. But again, you can have all the talent in the world, but if you can't stick to a process, you'll just spin your wheels. And I've seen so many stores, like when we talk about recipe, all that stuff, and you'll get a kick out of this because you've heard me say this many times before. We used to get a lot of visitors, and I'd come out and they'd see us, and the joke, like between you and I for years was, I go, man, I got frustrated after a while of people asking for the special sauce, right? So they'd come and they'd look and they'd take all the notes, and then they'd kind of get at the end of the day, go, okay, pour it in my hand, man. I'm going to go back to Texas now and just give me that special sauce. Like, what are you doing? And I go, I just showed you what I was doing for the last couple of days. And it's not one thing, okay? They kept looking at me, and I go, I'm not the special sauce, okay? He's not the special sauce. Like, the sauce is, that guy's talented. He's talented. That guy's got a great attitude. So does he. And they both worked really hard, and they're both working towards the same goal, and they're coachable. They show up on time. They're accountable. So my thing I always tell guys, if you have a good attitude and you have a good work ethic, I can teach anybody to write service. I can teach anybody to be a tech. Okay. Follow me, go through this process. You just control those two things. I can almost guarantee you the byproduct will be success in one way, shape, or form when we're done. Right?
And you do such a great job, Pete, of hiring the right team members. I mean, I like to use the acronym CIA. You want to hire your CIA members. Are they coachable, intelligent, and A is for attitude? And so coachable, we know that being coachable is someone who recognizes, hey, I have blind spots. I have a lot to learn. I have a long way to go and a long way to grow. I want to be a lifelong learner. I want to commit to thinking like a rookie. I want to put myself under the scrutiny of Pete Coleman so that he can show me and tell me what I need to improve and grow and develop. And then the I for intelligence is not necessarily book smarts. This is like emotional intelligence. This is recognizing
boot smarts.
Yeah.
Head on the swivel, right?
Self-awareness, situational awareness, especially in your industry, Pete. When you have a lot of your team members working with guests, knowing how and when to exercise some empathy, for example. And then, of course, A for attitude. My favorite quote about attitude comes from Zig Ziglar. Your attitude, not your aptitude, will determine your altitude. And man, when you can find those three attributes in someone that you're hiring, you're right, dude. I mean, you can as long as they have their CIA member, they have attitude, they have put forth a good effort. The rest of the stuff can be taught. I mean, it's about connection before content, and you can teach the content and get the connection from you, Pete. And so you mentioned how not only professionally we're going through trials and errors in order to develop this Pete Coleman method. I mean, I think we've learned by now it actually took you 10 years to become an overnight professor, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But how did this come about based on your own personal life?
Man, so my story, I guess, on the personal side of life is I spent a long time lying to the guy in the mirror, being toxic. Okay, so it was easy to pour at work. All that stuff was real. But I didn't really embrace my own ideology that now I kind of, it's the thing I live and die on every day. Okay. So 3 or 4 years ago, I was really heavy. I was 570 pounds, worked a lot, had my eyes on just the wrong stuff. I was putting my identity, approval, and metrics and numbers and that kind of stuff, and achieved those things, okay, but at a cost. And I woke up one day and I go, man, I am a time bomb. Okay, I could feel it. I was just I was miserable physically, emotionally. I was just unhealthy in a lot of ways. I had little kids that was starting to wear on my conscience, wear on my heart, literally and figuratively. And I said, hey man, I'm gonna get healthy once and for all. Okay, I've tried every diet in the world. So I went and had a gastric surgery. They took a portion of my stomach out and made it smaller. So, which again, the doctors, it's only as good as the tool that it is. Okay. It's not so you have to have a good work ethic and you have to stick to a process. You can't just do that and miraculously you're going to be skinny and your life changes. So people still squander that left and right. And I said, man, if I'm going to go through all this and put my family through surgery, I said, I'm going to apply myself finally once and for all. Let's go. So I lost over 300 pounds in just over a year, which was more than they said I should have lost. They said the most people lose with the type of surgery you got, it's like 160 pounds with where you're at kind of thing back. So they said anything else above that is, basically you, diet, effort, things like that. Okay. So I lost the weight, felt great, man. This is all in pursuit of health, be around my kids, be a better father, husband, leader, everything. I was sleeping terrible, all that stuff. Just health problems on health problems. So, praise God, lost the weight, felt great. I had a hernia, belly button hernia for like 7 years before that, but I could never get operated on because I was so heavy. So finally I said, hey, I can get that taken care of. So I went in for surgery. It was almost a year later. I remember reading a stat, I think a couple days before, belly button hernia is the most common surgery in North America. Hundreds of thousands of that surgery. It's just an outpatient things, people have hernia all the time. So, I went in at 1:00, had my outpatient surgery. I was home by 7. Just started feeling bad, started feeling worse and worse. And I just kept telling my wife, and she wouldn't take her eyes off me, thank God. And I kept telling her, I don't feel good, and she was watching me. I think she knew something was wrong before I did. Long story short, I remember going to the bathroom, and next thing I know, she was picking me up off the floor. So, thank God, she told the paramedics came. I had internal bleeding, and I had blood pressure was 33 over nothing. I remember when the EMTs got that, which I've learned a lot about blood pressure since then. It's not good. So basically there's no blood left in my extremities. Okay. That bottom number being 0. My heart was pumping nothing. So I got rushed to the hospital. It was like, I think 3 a.m. by this point, because I tried to ride it out at home and, be a tough guy or see if it would go away. And I didn't. And obviously I ended up there. So I was 37 years old. I just turned 40. So nobody ever thinks they're going to be in a situation. In fact, everybody says just that. You never thought it was going to happen. But I remember waking up in the emergency room, operating room. I remember looking around and going, this feels very urgent. Hustle, bustle, something's going on. I'm the only guy in the room. There's like 10 people. Okay. So, kind of said, what's going on? Definitely didn't feel well. A lot of pain. And this doctor turns his chair around. Okay. Now, I've always been a believer in God, but that night changed my life forever. So the guy that happens to turn around on that stool that night, 3 a.m, is the head of all gastric surgery and emergency surgery for UC Health, and he lives in Vail, but he just happens to be on call that night. So like the best guy there is. Okay. He said, hey, we got to move fast. He goes, I need you to sign 2 forms. He said, one is for emergency surgery consent. The other is for blood transfer. You've lost 4.5 liters of blood inside your gut. And if you don't move quick, you're not going to make it. I said, wow. Okay. Tough to digest, right? You're just kind of sitting there like, this can't be real. This is brain. I mean, I literally thought, I'm like, I'm going to wake up. There's no way. This is very vivid. Okay. Then he handed me the phone and he said, hey, it's your wife. I said, she called. He said, no, I called her. He said, you got about 10 seconds. He goes, say goodbye. There's a strong chance you don't wake up.
Man, goosebumps.
Yeah. So, what do you say? Said, I love you. So, I was going to stand up and walk out. Obviously, that wasn't the case. So, I said, I love you. Tell the kids I love them. I was knocked out. And I woke up, thank God, the next morning, and went down to emergency surgery. Yeah, died twice. So I actually coded for a minute 40. So,
Wow. Died twice on the operating table. You wake up. What's the first memory you have after waking up?
quite literally, I remember seeing sun. I think I woke up at like 7:30. The last memory I had was that phone call, right? And thinking, I remember, I'm going to stand up, walk out, right? Show them. I couldn't raise my hand to sign. They had to press the clipboard on my hand, So waking up and seeing sunlight audibly, I said, thank God. Like I said, thank God. I was in the ICU for quite a while. Ended up having 7 abdominal surgeries in 6 months and a blood issue they couldn't figure out. So tons of pain, tons of trauma. All this being said, it's still obviously tough to relive it, but not in a bad way. It's just, I guess it's gratitude that comes out of me. It's like, I sat there for a while and go, why am I here? Why did I get, saved? Our 4th kid was 2 weeks old that night. How did Kaylee feel that night? I can't imagine, so for a long time after, I questioned, like, why did I get kept? What am I here for? Like, what do you, and I realize now I don't need to know that. That's not mine to find out. Okay. But, I am here and I live every single day going forward to try and make an impact, to try and anything I come in contact with, my job, the guys here, I try to make an impact. I want to leave people better or things better than when I got there. So the Pete Coleman method, applies to, automotive repair. It applies to I helped out a guy with a sandwich shop the other day, and I said, hey, not trying to bust your chops, man. I said, I love your place. I said, you got a huge bottleneck in the way this thing orders. And I said, I hate that. He's like, I know, it's the worst. Could you help me fix it? Help fix is how they order sandwiches. The guy's ecstatic. Like, I'm a weirdo like that, and if somebody doesn't want it, I will give it to him. It's fine. But I want to help. And like, I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave a legacy of my kids. I want to leave a legacy of my wife. I want to leave a legacy of the brand I'm at. Like, I feel honored that I work for a brand, thank God, where I can talk about God and I can do it.
Yeah.
Like, I could tell my story. If I worked at a dealership or somewhere else, man, I probably couldn't tell the story like I can now, or I couldn't tell it publicly, or, so I'm grateful for that, man. I'm grateful to be alive. It was a incredibly challenging season. So we had, obviously a newborn, 2-year-old. I couldn't pick up more than a milk jug for about a year because I had so many abdominal surgeries. I had no muscle, like it would just tear. And so I had a nurse come to our house every 48 hours for 6 months to change the wound. I had an 8-inch incision, had to carry around a wound vac, all that stuff. Like, yeah, it was terrible. Okay. But you will never hear a single ounce of victimhood or, man, I wish that didn't happen to me. Boy, it was hard, but boy, it taught me a lot. Okay. So Pete Coleman method, and man, we've had conversations. I struggle with the imposter syndrome like you wouldn't believe. Okay. When I tell somebody here, hey, this is where you screwed up, or hey, this is right, or nobody likes having those conversations. Okay. Like, you can do better. In fact, I need you to do better. Okay. And when I tell those guys, man, I'm the same way to the guy in the mirror every night, probably too much. Okay. Like, if I think I'm 100% correct in a disagreement with my wife, guess what? I'll probably still go back the other night and go, where can I improve? What can I do better? What's God trying to teach me in this, right? Rick Morgan has a quote that I will never forget, and I have it written down at home. And he says, God will put you in situations in your life in which you're tempted to express the exact opposite quality that he is trying to develop in you, right? Am I angry? God is telling me to be patient, right? This needs to go faster. Be still. I want to know. I don't need to know, right?
So good. Man, there's a lot to unpack here, Pete. It's to me, this story needs to be told, right? I mean, so you say, hey, I don't necessarily need to know why I'm here, because you're questioning, hey, why me? Why was my life spared? But you're asking some great questions. First and foremost, rather than asking, hey, God, why me? We can ask, hey, what are you teaching me? And it sounds like you've shifted your mindset to what are you teaching me? And your mindset also, you mentioned you're not a victim of your story. You're the author of your story. And we know that this story needs to be told for a reason. We can't have a testimony without a test and a message without a mess. And this is a testimony and a message that a lot of people need to hear. And my hope is that someone listening to this episode can hear this and know and relate to, hey, I'm experiencing the same types of struggles, whether I did in the past, or whether I'm currently dealing with it now. And there are people who, like yourself, who are able to overcome some very tough, challenging situations and circumstances and live through it all to tell. And I'm just so thankful for you being here. And it's such a powerful story. And I think the entire world would be remiss if they didn't have an opportunity to hear it. So, man, I'm glad you're on this episode, Pete. But it's incredible to see what you've been able to do over the years. I alluded to it earlier, how I've seen a lot of growth in you professionally, but also personally, and to see you really work through the challenges as it relates to even imposter syndrome, and really strengthening your mindset over the years, man. It's incredible to see. And the good news is we both know, you and I both know, it's only improving. I hear you say often, iron sharpens iron, right? And it's this concept of each other sharpening each other's iron and being able to be there for people in times of need. And a lot of times we don't even necessarily need to know what to say, or
present, right? Just there, or just show up. That's it. And guess what? Like we my thing was that, okay? Guess what? There were 30 other people in the ICU when I was there that probably had it way worse than me. Like I'll never forget having a pity party one day, walking around the ICU. Oh, I'm in pain, right? Oh, my gut hurts. Come around the corner, there's a kid, maybe the age of one of my 7 or 8, come around the corner, wheeling IV, thing's bald, right? It's like, oh, my stomach hurts, but I'm alive. This kid, come on, man. Like, Coleman, never be a victim. I despise victimhood and entitlement. Anybody that knows me well, it ain't gonna ever fall out of my face. Yeah, it was painful. It was terrible in a lot of ways, but guess what? Something else is going to replace that pain or that hardship at some point. Life is really hard, okay? It's not fair. It's not easy. Somebody else's pain might not be a gut blood issue health thing. It might be, who knows? Cancer, emotional, mental, loss of who knows? It's hard. It's full of stuff. So Pete Coleman method in a nutshell is acknowledging it's going to be difficult no matter what. I know how I'm going to react. I know I walk with the Lord. I know I am going to choose to face head on whatever comes at me. I'm going to organize my work. I'm going to go work my plan. I'm going to get it done. I'm never going to quit.
Love it.
Make everything better.
You're truly living outside of your comfort zone. You're choosing, once again, it's a choice, and you're choosing to live outside of your comfort zone to make sure that you're always able to overcome the obstacles. Pete, man, thank you so much for being on the podcast. I want to ask one final question, and that is, you mentioned how it's not easy. It's not easy to deal with, physical struggles, with mental struggles, but you're choosing to make a choice every single day. And so, in fact, before I ask this last question, I want to highlight one thing, and that is this: I've seen you over the years really intentionally level up 5 specific areas of your life that I think it's important. It's critical that we all are mindful of these 5 areas, and that is you're leveling up spiritually, you're leveling up physically, you're leveling up emotionally, academically, and financially. Those are 5, I believe, pillars that every person should be mindful of leveling up in their life. And we can't just go hard on one and ignore the others. We've got to truly find and create and cultivate a healthy balance on all five. So I want to give you props for that first and foremost, because I see it, and the growth that you're having is incredible. And that's why I really am excited that you're on this episode. I know someone is going to be walking away better than they were before because of you and all the information that you provided today. But my last question to you, Pete, is this: what advice would you be giving to anyone who's struggling with any of the challenges that you've dealt with in your own life?
It's going to pass at some point. It'll stop, right? Quite literally, situations either with family, friends, loved ones, physical pain, emotional trauma. I mean, ripples from that night you never would have expected, right? And whether the situation's the same, similar, we don't have the veil pulled back, right? We don't know how the final chapter looks, right? God does, okay? So my advice is, hey, it's going to pass. It will end. Control the controllables, right? So I've said that for a long time, but when you start to own that, okay, meaning I am going to control whatever I can, okay? And not from a prideful standpoint, like I would get anything I can. If it is mine to control and I can influence the outcome, okay, I cannot change the fact that I decided to lose blood randomly after a routine surgery. Had nothing to do with a decision of mine. Trust me, it would have passed. Okay. Yeah. I can choose how I'm going to react to it. And guess what? My reaction initially probably wasn't perfect. In fact, I know it wasn't. There was a lot of times where I said, why me? Why me? Oh gosh, take it away from me. I don't want this, right? But man, you can't quit. Okay. Lean on people, believe in yourself, control those controllables. So like, man, if your thing is some sort of pain, some sort of struggle, get up, do what you can, reach out, seek counsel, seek wisdom, right? Don't isolate yourself, man. And I do that. You've called me out on the same thing, man. Coleman, you're quiet. You're being an ostrich. I'm back. Thank you. Okay. Don't isolate yourself. Control the controllables. Turn to God.
Love it, man. And you said it. I don't think we can say this too much, and that is always seek help. Multiple minds are better than one, and especially when our minds are struggling and at confliction with or at conflict with who we are or maybe what we're doing, find somebody.
And the beautiful thing, I guess, to end the second half of that, and I'll stop. Control the controllables, and then when you can't, or you realize, and that's okay, that guess what? This isn't in my control. Push it away.
Good.
Let God figure it out and just go make the next right decision.
That's good.
Go to the work, go do the gym, go do the thing you don't want to do. Do something to control an outcome you want.
Love it. Love it. Pete Coleman, hey brother, I love you. I'm glad you're on the episode. This was an absolute pleasure. So thank you for joining us. This hopefully will not be your last time on the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. So thanks again, Pete.
Awesome, man. Thank you. Honored. Have a wonderful day, buddy.
You too, man. Well, thank you all for tuning in to the Josh Parnell Leadership Podcast. Have a great day, everyone. Don't forget to smile today. Tell your loved ones how much they mean to you. I'm Josh Parnell, reminding you to keep leading well.